what are the plans of the government when it comes to the transportation system here in Central Luzon, or actually what we consider as the Greater Capital Region? The Marcos administration, since coming in, has, as mentioned by our previous speakers, wants to continue the momentum when it comes to the infrastructure development of the country. So this is a marching order from our president to build better more and to align this with global standards, especially with the vision of the secretary when it comes to having a transportation system that is aligned with global standards. What does this mean exactly? It means that we have a comfortable, accessible, safe, sustainable, and affordable transportation service for the entire country. This is found in the 8-point socioeconomic agenda of the government. One of our key priorities is really to reduce logistics costs. So many of the initiatives of the government is very much focused on reducing the cost to do business, to transport goods, to transact, and this should benefit all businesses and even the common consumer. How do we do this? It's mainly to improve our infrastructure throughout the country in Central Luzon, and again, what we call the Greater Capital Region, which includes Central Luzon, NCR, and Calabarzon. I think it was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, I think Yusek Bobby mentioned, that a month ago, the president announced, together with our partners from the US government, the Luzon Economic Corridor. This is a big thrust of the government to better integrate the entire island of Luzon, particularly with the Greater Capital Region. Last year, the Department of Transportation, together with the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, started what we call the 30-year Railway Master Plan. As you can see here, one of the key strategies of the government is to revive freight transportation. It is still the most efficient form of transporting goods over land, but the last mile will still obviously be covered by trucks. But when long distance travel over land, it is very efficient to transport goods. And one of the key projects in the Luzon Economic Corridor is what we now call the Subic-Clark, Manila, and Batangas Railway. I think it was mentioned in the previous presentation by our regional director that there was this previous project, the Subic-Clark Railway, that just connected Subic Port and Clark Freeport Zone. But realistically, this 70-kilometer section would be more viable, would be more feasible if we connect it to our other economic centers, such as the Port of Manila and the Port of Batangas, and connecting all the different economic zones throughout that region. I believe there's a lot of economic centers still in Calabarzon. So having this comprehensive railway system connecting that Luzon Economic Corridor is very vital for our country. I think on the drive here, maybe some of you have seen the ongoing North-South commuter railway traversing the NLEX. So that's going to continue as well, all the way to the north. That's what we're calling, for example, the North Long-Haul Railway. So this is meant to be an interregional railway connecting not just Manila to Clark, but also past to Tarlac and all the way to Ilocos region. So this is a priority project of the administration. This will carry both passenger and freight, and it is designed for the future. This is a very important project for the government as well. One thing you'll see in many of our, and I think this is what the theme of the conference is, sustainability. We will be pushing for these railway systems to be electrified. This is the most efficient way for us to transport goods and by minimizing carbon emissions. So please expect these railways to also be electrified in the future. This all relates to the government's push to really be a facilitator and developer of infrastructure and logistics infrastructure. Before, we've let the private sector lead the development of our logistics infrastructure, but with the recent Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028, it is now a government push to develop infrastructure projects with our partners from the private sector and with partners from other developed countries, such as the US, the Asia Development Bank, Japan, Korea, and also some other countries such as Sweden. And this is all facilitated through the new legal frameworks that have been passed by our Congress, such as the Public-Private Partnership Code and the implementing rules and regulations, which we hope and which we intend to unlock more of the private sector capital. I think some examples here that you see in Clark are the the new terminal for the Clark International Airport. That was done via PPP. It was well made, and we hope for private sector innovation and initiative to grow the air traffic here in Clark. So that is one of the key areas where we hope to drive innovation and efficiency is through our partners in the private sector. And again, this is all aligned with an old policy actually back in 2017, the National Transport Policy, which you can read on Meta's website. What I've talked about are just one of the key thrusts of the national government when it comes to transportation infrastructure. So again, one of our top priorities is the lowering of logistics cost, but I think, not sure if it was mentioned earlier or if I don't recall it correctly, but tourism is one of the key thrusts of the government. How do we make sure our country is very welcoming to foreign visitors? How do we make us competitive to the likes of Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, our other peers in the country? And this is a balancing act that we need to undertake. Yes, we're building airports. We're building airports all around the country. We have the initiative of the private sector to open new flights to other parts. I believe it was just announced last month that there will be a Clark to Basco flight. I forget if it's Cebu Pacific or PAL, but essentially this is the type of tourism services that we hope to promote by increasing our investments in tourism infrastructure, particularly our regional airports. So as part of our key thrust, we are improving many regional airports throughout the country, such as Busuanga, Siargao, Zamboanga. These are key areas where we hope to build bigger and larger airports so we can have more services opened up for tourists, but also for many of our fellow citizens here. One of the initiatives also that I'd like to talk about today is, of course, our ability to generate jobs. So the Philippine government is very much aware that we need to generate jobs for our fellow citizens, both direct through investments in our infrastructure, but also indirect investments which will promote more services in hotels, in resorts, and these are the indirect benefits of many of our infrastructure investments. So one of our key lookouts is how do we generate jobs for our fellow citizens. As mentioned, not only projects are important, we also have to create a very open regulatory framework or a very welcoming regulatory framework. I've already talked about the PPP code. We also have the past PSA, the Public Service Act, which now opens up several industries to foreign investments. So for example, our airports can now be 100% foreign owned, and we hope to bring international capital to the Philippines as well and bring in those international experience to the Philippines. We want to, of course, promote green and sustainable transportation. We are looking, again, at ways to reduce the carbon emissions of our freight sector. For our maritime shipping, we're looking at investing together with our ship companies to renew their fleets, to not buy as many secondhand vessels, but to really buy brand new vessels, perhaps with alternative fuels such as methanol, ammonia even, but essentially to make our domestic merchant fleet more efficient and more environmentally sustainable. Lastly, I'd like to talk about how we're actually going to do these things because, of course, I'm telling you our plans, but how are we making these things a reality? Again, we're diversifying our funding partners. I think Yusek Bobby mentioned that we should not walk alone. It's better to walk together with our partners. And we are really cutting across all different kinds of partnerships, as mentioned already with the US government, with JICA, with ADB. We have partnerships now with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the one based in Beijing, but also partners from other countries such as France, Spain, and even Italy. So this is how we intend to essentially pay for all these things. We want to make sure we're getting best quality in terms of the equipment, the designs, the best practices. And this is very much in line with the Secretary's thrust to bring our transportation sector to international standards. So with that, I believe I can answer some question and answer later in the panel, and I invite you to ask as many questions as you want. So thank you very much and have a good morning.